Hey there, we are Rob and Joanna Teigen. Welcome back to the Growing Home Together podcast. We've been married for over 30 years and we've parented our 5 kids through all the ages and stages. We're excited to share our passion for caring for the soul of your family with you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us today on the Growing Home Together podcast. Today is an exciting episode for us. First of all, we are celebrating our 100th episode since we created the podcast, and we are so grateful for the production team of Savage Content. We appreciate every one of the guests that have been on here and encouraged us in our faith and in loving our families well, and we also are so thankful for each of you who have tuned in and listened and joined us here and supported this ministry. So we really appreciate you, and we're excited to be here today.
Yes, and this episode is also extra special to Rob and I because we get to welcome some of our favorite people to the show, our family. Our oldest son, Josh, is here with his wife, Cassie, and our oldest daughter, Emma, joins us with her husband, Adonis, and they've given us one of the greatest gifts of our lives, our grandbabies, and they're here to help us accomplish 3 goals. We want to grow our empathy for young couples and parents in this season. We want to learn how to serve as a support system, and we want to gain some ideas for how to connect with our grandchildren as they grow. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Of course.
Happy to be here.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever sat around the table with 6 people for the podcast before. This is really great.
Not. Yeah, this is special. So before we jump in, could you guys share with us how long you've been married and your kids, a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, I can start. So we're on year 8. I'm Josh, too. 2 kids. Reed's 2.5. Harrison's almost 6 months. So lots of fun stepping into that stage of being a family and figuring it out. And
yeah,
it's definitely busy. They're both having 2 boys. It's busy, but it's good.
Yeah. I'm Emma, and Adonis and I have been married for 3 years, and we have 1 daughter. She's 17 months.
Okay, well, one reason that we're glad that you all are here is that for most of us grandparents, it has been a lot of years since we were in that young married season of parenting little ones. So maybe you can refresh our memories by just sharing a little bit about what it's like for you right now. What would you say are some of the most major adjustments that you've had to make since having your babies?
I could take this one. Definitely sleep for us. I knew, at least going into pregnancy, that sleep was going to be really hard. I definitely need my sleep. And so that was definitely a big adjustment because we had Reed, who was not a great sleeper until about 14 months. And we thought Harrison was going to maybe be better, but
he kind of psyched us out with like a good first 2 months. And then it just turned around real fast and it was a bad 4 months after that. But
right. And so we know when we're not sleeping well, we just aren't at our peak selves. And so I think that was an adjustment for us, and just having patience with one another as we navigated the sleep disturbances and interrupted sleep in the night, little sleep, and still having to chase around a toddler. That's, I would say, has been more challenging the second time around because it's not just the baby, it's a toddler too. So I think that has been the biggest adjustment. Thankfully, our boys seem to be doing better now, but just having extra support has been really important during those early days when you're adjusting and have a lot of changes going on simultaneously. So yeah, we've been thankful for all the meals that Grammy has brought over and extra hands to hold the little ones.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I don't know what we haven't adjusted. I mean, I don't know about anybody either, of our friends that have kids, young kids especially, that haven't had to adjust their entire lives almost. But I guess speaking about me and Emma, I'm Adonis, by the way. Yeah, we've had to adjust so much, but I think that, in our unique way of, life, what we do or what we were doing when we had Farron, when we had our daughter, we were very nomadic. We traveled a lot. We were coming out of a time where we were living in a van. We were moved to another country, built a cabin in another country. So that kind of free flow life was something that had to be adjusted and be adjusted at a very dramatic pace, I guess, for us, because we had gotten so used to that type of living. And so bringing in Farron, we knew that we needed to make adjustments, and the adjustments were going to needed to be made, right? But just how dramatically, how much of a stark difference that was going to be in our life. It was a lot. So just rooting, being more stationary, and also that bleeds into needing more support. We had to get used to needing more support and being able to ask for more support when we just really, that wasn't really how we were operating, right?
Very independent, and yeah, you guys show us what adventure looks like. So yeah.
Yeah.
Josh and I never lived in a van.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar where it's like going from, for years, kind of living a very spontaneous, kind of flowing with the wind type of life, to nap schedules and security and stability, and needing to totally transform our priorities for the sake of Farron was like actually a huge, like, entire life shift for us. Also, finding time for our relationship to like prioritize one-on-one time was really difficult. And I personally experienced a lot of anxiety with like childcare, and I was a bit of a control freak with Farron for the first chunk of her life. And so it was trying to walk that line of like being all in and fully committed to Farron and being what she needed, while also asking for the support and receiving the support to be able to have the capacity to still pour into each other, was like a difficult balance to find at the beginning.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you all say is that your lives changed pretty much down to core identity kind of stuff. What am I like when I'm so physically depleted? Who am I in this situation? Who am I when I am having to put down roots rather than pursuing these other things, and finding who you are as a couple again? Those are huge. And you're right. You made a point that those had to happen so quickly.
Yeah. And when Mom and I look back at the early young kid stage, we used to say with Josh that he was probably one of the best things that happened to our marriage, because so many of the things that we stressed about and worried about, we could just put all our focus and our energy into him and to making him happy, and just that kind of focus. And so I want to know what you guys would say, how your relationship has changed since you've had kids.
It's a tough one because, like everyone was saying, like you have the kid, and especially for your first one, your whole life does kind of change, because now you have this little thing that's completely dependent on you, and you have to learn how to like lay yourself down and take care of them. And they, at least in this young season that we're in with little ones, they kind of come first. And so, to like Adonis's point, like in some level, we're still adjusting and figuring it out, because they also change month over month, and then you got to kind of refigure it out again anyways. And so as far as how it's impacted us, like the first thing out of the gate was just the time that we had, because now it's split between more people in the house and having two instead of one. That means you're dividing and conquering more. So I think it's forced us to, we're still figuring out, I think, how to do this well and could do it better, be intentional with still making intentional time for one another, and not just always the kids or anything like that. But I think it's been good for us too, because it's a joy to get to do it together. And like, this is our thing God's given us for this season, and it's so much fun. And just like watching you be a mom and how it's changed our lives across the board. Because when we first had Reed, like jobs changed, your time, like just everything gets flipped around, but God's so good in it, and I get to see you operating in a different capacity than I had up to this point in our marriage.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that remembering back to when we were starting a family and you're working and you're still kind of developing your careers, or you're shifting things. I know Cassie, you were working for, even with Reed, and then adjusting back home. And so you're always making those adjustments and changes, right? And it is a different dynamic when you do have to divide and conquer. Cause I know, when you guys were younger, I was traveling a lot. And so mom would kind of take over things at home. And so just trying to figure out those ebb and flows can be a challenge. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think speaking back towards just what I said before about having to change our entire lives. Yeah. And truthfully, what Josh said, like everything kind of revolves around them for so much. And I feel like always in a way, but up until now, in every single way, we were just kind of putting Farron first and trying to learn how to adjust and be parents. So that comes with a lot of, less time together, less intentional time, less time to relax for sure. And way less time to sleep, like at least half, maybe even less than half the amount of sleep we probably would have normally gotten. And that kind of takes a toll on me more than Emma. Point is, like, you just have to get used to all these things that normally would just be a big inconvenience, right? To, like have bad sleep for a week or something, but that never ends. And then, just kind of feels like something extra. But at the same time, it's like one of the most beautiful things that you can experience throughout all the journeys, especially for us. It was kind of crazy because we were building a home in Costa Rica, and then we moved back to the States. Yeah, just knowing that having faith always, and even in the stressful times.
Yeah, I think that for the first year of Farron's life, a lot of our dynamic had shifted from just like being besties and like being very much like individuals living life together to having to be like unified on a whole nother level and having to logistically like be a team in a way we had never had to do before, and tag team things and divide and conquer. And that was all really different. And I think that in ways it put a strain on us for a time, but on the flip side of that, kind of like what Josh was saying earlier, like seeing each other step into the role wholeheartedly of being a parent and like fostering this life is so cool to witness. And being each other's anchor when everything around us is changing and uncertain is really powerful. And it did push us to a place where we were stronger than we knew we could be. And there were seasons where we even felt like really disconnected because of how we had to divide and conquer and kind of spread ourselves pretty thin. But through that, we ended up coming to a place where we had so much more confidence in each other and in our relationship and our ability to withstand things like that.
Yeah, and I would chime in with just how we've grown a lot spiritually together in our faith, I think, as a result of having kids, because, when we were dating, I remember being like, why are our parents so worried about, X, Y, or Z? Like, don't they know, like, God's got this? And then you have your own kids and you realize how many things there are to worry about, and you have to learn to surrender in a much deeper way than you've ever had to before. And I think I probably tend to worry more between the two of us and overthink things with kids. And so Josh has been that reminder for me of, they're the Lord's first and ours very much second. And I think that has led to deeper spiritual intimacy and has just really deepened our faith becoming parents individually and as a couple. And that's just been really sweet and just a side of my faith that I don't think I had to practice before, of really surrendering, at least not to this level. So it's been really nice to do that together.
Yeah, well, I can tell you with adult kids, that doesn't get easier. I'd love to tell you it did, but you still worry.
Except for us, you have no worries with us.
Oh, right. No, everything's perfect. Yeah. No, but yeah, you still have to remind yourself that you guys belong to the Lord, because there's just ways you want to support you guys and see you guys thrive. And so that never, and the prayers that never stop. So.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing all of that. You know, Josh and Emma, you have always been a blessing to us. And then you went and grew that blessing by marrying these amazing people and adding grandchildren to our lives. And I know that so many other parents and grandparents feel exactly the same way. But I think from what I've seen, the temptation can be there for grandparents to focus on their own experience with their kids and grandkids and what they want to get out of it and the blessings they want to enjoy rather than understanding what you want and need. So we were hoping that you could share just one thing that you wish extended families could understand about life with young kids right now. Okay.
I think I would just say that maybe just with the generational gap, perhaps there's just more unique challenges that we're facing right now that maybe weren't around quite so much when grandparents had their young children. So I think of things like technology and maybe the economy right now, of financial stressors that a lot of young families might be going through. It just looks a little bit different. And so I think maybe not so much something to change, but just talking about the unique challenges that they're facing in today's day and age and how grandparents can come alongside in supporting young families with those unique challenges. So even things like, as our kids grow, creating a technology safe home so that we as parents can feel comfortable sending our children to the grandparents' house knowing that there's good safeguards in place. So I think that's what comes to mind for me, is just some more unique challenges than there was even 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because part of why the question I think is hard, more so for today, is that the kids are still so young. And so it's a little more simple, just in that by and large, we're just kind of meeting physical needs. And so it's like, we're all going to make sure they're fed. We're hopefully going to get them down for a nap. If one poops, we'll take care of it. It only goes so far, but we're starting now, especially as Reed gets older and he's taking in so much and trying to understand the world. We're having these conversations now of what does it look like to create a worldview and help him figure out what that is, what's right and what's wrong, and having boundaries, or how do we discipline, all the things that come with as he's going to grow up and is more and more in the world. There's going to be more and more things that kind of we as a family have to figure out and get on the same page about, because some of the nuances of that, like Emma and Adonis, you're going to probably do things a little different with Farron than we are with our kids, and that's okay.
Yeah, I feel like similarly, Farron is still quite young, and we're really grateful for Farron has grandparents that are very respectful of our specific wishes that we've given thus far, even when it comes to hey, we don't want Farron to have sugar or whatever it is, you guys have always been very receptive of that. And I think that it's hard to give general opinions because everybody's parenting style is so unique to them and what they want for their children. I would say overall, just honestly having a receptive listening ear is so powerful. Listening to the specific wants of the parents, how do you want me to handle disciplining them if they need that while they're under the grandparents' care, their diet, or boundaries, not forcing them to hug so-and-so or whatever it may be. I think that that's all so personal and varies family by family, but having an overall posture of humility and desire to respect that the parents are the parents and the grandparents are just kind of honoring that is really powerful. And I think it gives so much ease to the parents of not having to worry about battling with the grandparents on those topics, because the grandparents might not always agree with it, which again, we're really thankful that we haven't had that. But I know that, that's not always the case.
We have really well-spoken kids. You guys are fantastic.
Yeah. We have a podcast recording coming up that we're doing on just with adult children, and how to navigate life with your adult children. And I think the subtitle of the book is something like, keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat there or something like that. And sometimes I think some parents may take offense to that, but I think it is a reminder that, you're establishing your own homes and, our responsibility is to support that. And we're not going to always agree with everything, and grandpas like to push the boundaries just like kids do. So, I'm like, are you really serious? I can't give my granddaughter sugar, so I'll push, but I would never, then you let me know you're like really serious. And so I'm like, okay, I won't push that boundary.
And Reed volunteers to take Farron's portion of sugar.
100%. See, then this is an area where, like you have kids that have different, so they're fine if I give him a cupcake for breakfast when he comes over. But, it's just, that's okay. It's differences. But being sensitive to that and like Josh said, talking that through and being okay if you don't agree.
Right. And that kind of feeds into something we were hoping to just hear from you, while we're talking, by all means, fill us in on how we can support you better. But the flip side of that is how can we even just so not even intentionally create stress for you instead of serving and helping you? Like if you could give us just a little list, like not helping, we're all ears.
I mean, thankfully there's nothing like drastic. We're like, man, this was more of like a burden than a blessing. Cause by and large, we're just super thankful that you love the boys, you love the Lord. We know that you're going to take care of them. And like, that's what's most important. Anything that comes to mind, I think is more so like self-imposed. I haven't thought about it this last week with Monday when we talked about coming over for dinner and then like getting closer. And I'm just thinking about like how there's all this stuff to do to get ready for the week. And at least personally, I've wrestled with just like how many hours that I have in the week to even actually spend intentional time with the boys, because I maybe see him for a half hour before I leave for work, and then you get back from work and there's 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. And so I definitely feel like there's only so much time just for us that sometimes I'm like, well, I just want to have that time. But then because we love you, like I still want to spend time with all of us as a family too. And so sometimes I think it's a self-imposed pressure though.
So you're saying it's not helpful if your extended family adds pressure to be here when we want you to be here, but to cut you some slack if you need to take family time to just have freedom and grace for that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to say like you've had that pressure. I think some of it's just me putting it on myself.
Yeah, I definitely second everything that Josh just said. And I feel as though there can almost be a pressure that is totally self-imposed. It's not from you guys. Or I'll say don't want to feel distant. Like I don't want to feel distant. I want to feel like we're distancing ourselves from spending time with you guys. And at the same time, I also don't want to feel like we're only coming over when we're dropping Farron off to go do something. So kind of finding that balance is a little bit challenging because, and this is for us, but I feel like this is sort of the situation, at least for a lot of people with young kids and young families, is that we're working a lot. Like the only day of the week that me and Emma can spend more than half a day together is on Sundays. Every other day is grind it out and get to the end of the day and do it over again.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's in those processes when you are communicating, because I get that too, some of that self-imposed. So when you're kind of expressing like you want to come over for dinner, also just giving an out, recognizing that you guys do have a busy family and you do. So being able to say, hey, no pressure, but we'd love to see you, but if not. And so letting you guys kind of, and I think that's what we've tried to do. Now we don't do it perfectly, but try to let you set the tone of things. I mean, I remember when Mom and again, when you guys were young and we realized, we have to start setting some of our own holiday traditions and some of those kind of things. And that's a hard thing to try to do, because it's like, we love going to other families for the holidays and but we realized we're always living out of suitcases and traveling. And so if those things can be communicated where you can set boundaries for your family, but help each other through it, and sometimes it's hard not to take those things personally, but realize that We've all been in those situations where we've had to make decisions for our family unit, whether it's comfortable for everybody.
Right. I mean, I don't know if you would agree or not, but it seems like tension happens when there is some kind of a mismatch in expectations. So that could be around holidays, right, Rob? Just family expects you here. That doesn't align with what's good for our nuclear family. How are we going to navigate that? It could be things like, I remember when Josh, when you were really little, we had really generous grandparents. And sometimes I wasn't sure if just the level of stuff that you were gifted with was ultimately going to be good for you. So navigating, like, do we need to set boundaries around how many toys he accumulates? I don't know. Do we relax some of the standards we keep at home just to make things go smoother? I don't know. I mean, these are hard things, but would you say that if you come in with a mismatch of expectations, that is where the rub can be? And then what do you think are some ways that families can kind of get on the same page? Because communication isn't always easy.
I feel like we haven't run into this a whole lot, but we're also only a year and a half in. But I do have some friends who have run into this where, similar to what the example you just gave, Mom, was the grandparents' way of like expressing love towards their grandchildren is to like spontaneously buy them gifts or like go crazy on a holiday or their birthday or whatever it may be. And that can be a burden on the parents, creating space, kind of seeing if those things are
Buying tons of noisy toys.
Yeah.
And then saying, here you go.
right. And I feel like, I mean, Adonis and I are currently, as we prepare for the upcoming year, we're kind of trying to reevaluate like what we bring into our home and, you know, being more mindful of the things that we hold on to and the things that we let go of, and raising Farron with that intentionality as she gets older. I know that communication is such like what you said, like it's difficult, but I do feel like a lot of that comes with just creating a dynamic and a relationship where nothing is off the table to talk about. And I think that takes time and trust almost to be built up to know that that's a safe relationship to lay anything down at, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that necessarily always comes naturally, but I think that if the grandparents are really taking what's said to heart and intentional about the way that they respond and respect those things, I think over time it becomes a lot easier for the parents to continue to communicate. And I think that it just kind of builds and grows as those grandparents kind of show up and continue to build that trust and comfortability.
Yeah. And I would say when there is like a rub that arises, there's some friction over something. I was talking about this with some of my girlfriends this week because one of my friends had an issue with her in-laws not really respecting some guidelines that they had put in place for what their daughter would be watching. And she was asking for advice on how to handle it. And most of my girlfriends in the group text were like, I think it's a good general rule of thumb to let your husband be the one to talk to his parents when there is an issue that arises, because I do think that in-law relationship can be a little bit more delicate. And so I would say on the grandparents' end too, like if there is something that you're like, is this an issue, to maybe address it directly with your child versus the in-law first. And then the flip side is true for us as parents too. I think in general, it will go better if it is the son or the daughter addressing it with their parent versus an in-law. For most situations, it's not every situation, but that's just what we had encouraged when there is that mismatch, perhaps, of expectation that needs to be talked through.
Yeah, and that can be challenging too, because you kind of know, I mean, like, you know what the buttons are, and you know what the hot topics or the not hot topics to talk about are. But I think that's a good word of advice. And also, I think it just takes pressure off the other person, right? To maintain and kind of protect that person from having to be the bad guy.
Yeah, and I guess from where I'm sitting, I would never want you to feel like the role that you're serving in my life is to give me grandchildren. My relationship with each of you as individuals is really precious to me too. And I know that you guys have expressed preferences, and these are not major deals, but even like clothing styles, like Emma, you had colors that you like and colors that you didn't like for Farron to wear. And Cassie, you're not wild about dinosaurs. And honestly, half the boy clothes in the store have dinosaurs on them, right? And then we joke about the sugar thing where Farron doesn't eat sugar and Reed does and all of that. And I don't know. I guess I'm trying to have a mindset of curiosity. Like those things aren't rules so much as little windows into your personality. And I can look at those as just something that makes you, you, and I like you. And so rather than treating them as you're trying to impose limits on me, to have it be, this is a way to know my loved one better. And by honoring that, it hopefully can just celebrate you as a person and not even be about the child, right?
Yeah. And I think too, like as grandparents, I think we have to maybe ask more questions and find out what it is that you guys like and don't like, and then set our pace that way. So, I mean, like I say, I love to joke about, picking on those areas, but we want to respect how you want to raise the grandkids, and we want to help and support that. We don't want to be a hindrance of that. So that probably requires us being more inquisitive.
Right.
It kind of works for everyone though if we all try to do that, because we're all on the same team and that like we love these kids. I mean, both for the grandparents and the parents to their kid, but then also for my niece now, like for all of us around the table with these little ones, we just want to like love on them and see them thrive and grow up healthy and love the Lord. And so in having these conversations, I think it's fair for there to be like some give and take on both sides, because if we're all willing to come to it and humble ourselves, where you're willing to ask questions and be like, yeah, if this is like a hard kind of thing that you're doing for your family, you'll lay yourself and maybe how your expectations or how you do it down. But then on the flip side, we have the same opportunity to kind of do the same thing, because it is easy, like, because we keep going back to the sugar thing, to be like, man, like Reed had a lot of sugar today while he was at Grandma and Grandpa's. But how often is that actually? And then if I'm willing to lay down how maybe like I would feed him for that one day, it is such an opportunity for him to just be like, wow, like I had so much fun at Grandma and Grandpa's. And it's investing in that relationship to where like what a blessing that is for him too, if I'm just willing to sacrifice and lay down my expectation for that one day with whatever it is. And so then if we all have that heart in it, it's not that there won't be those things that, yeah, you kind of rubs you the wrong way, we have to sort out, but it's not a my way or the highway. Like we're going to figure this out together. And if we all have that heart, I think it'll ultimately actually be better for the kid, because it'll make things special and he can see how we even navigate some differences sometimes, because they're always sitting there watching it too. Like Reed's listening to us in the other room all the time now, and we're having to figure out how to navigate that. I'm like, he heard what? Like, so he's going to start seeing it, and what a good lesson for him to learn too, that it's not always like what we say or you as the kids say goes. Like you can flex a little for other people. It's a blessing. So.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think also like what you're saying on the flip side, and kind of things going both ways, like in the same way that we as parents want and expect the grandparents to have that humble listening ear and be receptive to the parents' desires for their kids. I think also the parents trying to extend the same humility and really coming into, like, you guys have had 5 kids and raised 5 kids, and you have so much wisdom to bestow on us as parents. And I think that that's really valuable. And so us trying to be intentional to like take that opportunity to learn from you guys and hear you guys out if you have ideas or advice. Cause like what Josh said is like, you guys love Farron and love your grandkids so deeply and so well. And so if you have something to say, it's like, we know that your heart is because you care about her. And like, this is our first rodeo. And so I think that humility and willingness to listen, for the sake of just all kind of pouring into these kids, that does need to we need to be meeting in the middle when it comes to that for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I do hate saying no to my grandkids, but every once in a while I think I'm going to defer to the parents and say, what, if it's okay with your mom and dad.
You blame us.
Yeah, thanks for throwing me under the bus.
Oh, okay. Is that how it? In my head, it went so much different.
You're literally just out here
was
saying, I can't because your mom and dad said. I feel like that's probably but it's good for you because you're still the good guy in that situation.
Yeah.
So
in my head,
I can understand.
You make it sound so noble. I'm deferring to your parents. You're making us the bad guy.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I could see that.
From a positive point of view, tell us, 3 things that as grandparents we can do like this week that are going to make you feel like your load is a little lighter and that you have someone in your corner. What comes to mind?
I think first, and this is the thing that I really appreciate most about you guys and my parents, is I know that you're praying for us and our kids. I truly believe that that's the most powerful, positive thing that you can do for your family members. And so that is just something that's encouraging to me when I'm going through a hard time, knowing that there's people out there who are truly praying, not just saying we're praying for you, but are truly lifting us up before the one who can do something and who can help us. So that would be the first thing that comes to mind. I also think just week by week, especially if there's a difficult season that your son or daughter is going through, just asking how you can help. I think there's ways, it's kind of like the love languages where you're more inclined to help or you want to help, but just asking like, how can I help? What do you need? Would it be a meal? Would it be watching the baby for a few hours? Is it cleaning? Is it laundry? Like just what tangible need could I meet this week? Is it dropping off groceries? I think that goes a long way, and giving like actual examples, because sometimes you are just so tired. You're like, I don't even know what I need, but I feel like that's something that you're really good at. Like, hey, I'm not even asking, I'm going to drop off a meal, and just meeting a need when you see it or when you know that it's a difficult time. Those would be the top 2 things. I don't have a third yet, but those I feel like are 2 big things that I would never say no to.
You guys have already helped us out a lot in the last week. Like, I think just like being so willing to watch Farron and sacrifice your time for her is really major. But kind of like what Cassie said, I think that it's huge to just ask for examples of what each parent is needing in that moment. Because honestly, sometimes I just need to vent. Like having somebody who knows what it's like to raise kids and being able to be like, wow, this season is so hard because this is what's happening, and not feeling shame or feeling like you have to sugarcoat the hard parts, and knowing that you're speaking to somebody who loves you and will hear you and will encourage you through that is really impactful.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not just because we're on your podcast right now or anything, but it really is true. Like, you guys have helped us almost in the perfect way since we've been back. So, I mean, we're really grateful. We really, truly are. It's hard, honestly, and I feel like there might be other people that can relate, especially too, since, as Cassie did point out, that the in-law dynamic is a little bit different than with your own parents. Well, my parents are not in the state or country, so it is just you guys for me, and I already have a hard time enough asking for help from people ever, I feel like. So it's just tough. It's hard because being almost like what Cassie said too, just being open to or like asking, because odds are I don't think that I will be asking for anything, or I'll try not to as much as possible. And it's not because of any particular reason or because I don't know. It's just my personality. So, and I feel like there's other people like that too with in-laws. So
I will just say too, I feel like one of the greatest gifts that you give us is those date nights. And I love that you, Joanna, are really good at being like, it's been a while since you and Josh had a date. Like, you pay attention to that. it's been a while since you've had a date night, or that sounds like a reason to celebrate. You'll have to do a date night soon and we'll take the kids. And I feel like you are really sensitive to our relationship. Like you said, you don't just care about the grandkids. You want to see us thrive as individuals and as a couple. And that's something that really means a lot. It's like, oh, she sees our relationship and she loves our relationship and wants to see it do really well, and volunteering to have us go on a date night when it's not something we might be prioritizing ourselves. So it's not only accountability, but it's also just very generous and makes us feel really seen and loved.
I'm so glad. I know in our young years, those are some of the most key memories actually of how your grandparents cared for us was, those times we could just go to the ocean for one night were so restorative. It's amazing how much good can happen in just 24 hours. So if we can pay that forward, that would be awesome.
And that kind of leads to another question that Josh and Cassie, you know this as well, because you had a period of this, but for people listening that don't have grandparents here or in their town and their immediate, like we didn't meet Farron until she was 6 months old. And it's probably good that you guys it didn't work out for you to come visit before you moved back, because we probably would have had a hard time letting you guys go once we did meet her. But, and you were living, Emma, in a foreign country and a different language and having a baby there and, like navigating a lot of different things there too. And so do you guys have any thoughts or input for those that, ways that grandparents can connect with and be supportive of a family and the grandkids when they're not in the same town? Because it's a blessing to have you guys in our proximity, and it would be a real challenge, and those days may come where, it looks different. And so any thoughts on that?
Like, it's been a huge blessing for us having our community that we've been able to invest in and find outside of family over the last couple of years. And I would say all of it basically is just as a result of being involved in the church. And so there's something very special about finding that support and everything from family, but also we have a family in the church. And so for someone that doesn't have that, I think my encouragement would be to spend the time to go and try to get connected and invest in that. And it's really hard because you have to kind of establish a level of commitment like you would maybe if it was family, and also show up and maybe sacrifice or lay yourself down as if they were family. I remember when I was in Costa Rica and far away from you guys, even just those video calls were so encouraging, and it did feel like, even though of course it wasn't the same as in person, it did feel like there were connections being made and introductions happening with you and Farron, and foundational relational things happening in the best way that it could, and regularly doing that, and the intentionality behind just regular conversation and calls and sending photos and asking, just kind of maintaining that consistent contact, even if it's from afar, does make a huge difference. And of course, the prayer is huge. And this is not a grandparent dynamic, but my best friend, we have been doing long distance for a really long time. And it's actually so hard because we love each other and we feel like family to each other. And we both have young daughters, and that distance takes a toll sometimes. And there have been times where we're struggling or we're having a hard day or there's a burden on our shoulders. And when she's called me up to pray for me, over the phone, not just saying, oh, I'm praying for you, but actively calling me in the moment, being I'm going to pray over you right now, or vice versa. It is so you feel so cared for, and it hits different. So I think that you can extend that, you can make your children feel seen and cared for and connected, even from afar, with that intentionality. And we weren't able to experience this because we were in Costa Rica, so we couldn't receive packages, but even just sending little cards or letters,
or whatever, or like if they're talking about craving something, or if there's a snack that the grandkid loves, and being able to spontaneously send little things that make their day or whatever is again, it's that effort that makes those parents and children feel seen and cared for, even if you can't be there in person.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Josh, about that sometimes having to lay your own preferences down and lay things down for the good of the family as a whole, or the grandkids, and making sure that the families are surrounded by love, because it's hard. I think there are opportunities through the church, which is so important, to have community to support you, even spiritual grandparents if grandparents aren't around. But that's hard for a grandparent to like show up and see, other grandparents interacting with their kids and knowing their kids better than they do. But knowing that's important, and that's generational, and it helps them bond with their grandparents when they see them too. And so, yeah, just thinking through even or laying down time, like making time for the Zoom calls. And even if it's bath time and you have to get the kid to the camera, and 9 times out of 10, or sometimes they don't want to say hi to grandma and grandpa, and like just being sensitive and open with those conversations, and that willingness you have to work harder at it.
Yeah. And Cassie, this is something that I have always admired so much about your parents, because you have nieces and a nephew who are out of state, and your parents, kind of echoing Emma's word on intentionality, they're planners. Like, they don't just hope they'll get to see them. They put it on the calendar, they budget in their travel money, and they plan way out so they don't miss it. I respect that a lot. They have, busy careers in their own right. And I think with their time and money, they really prove where their priorities are. And I respect that a lot. And I think we felt that with our parents, because we never had parents living in the same state when you all were young. And that was hard. But the same thing, they planned ahead, figured it out. Even sometimes a lot of sacrifice of time and money, but knowing that they were willing to do that meant the world to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can speak as a grandchild who I didn't have any grandparents close by, but hopefully this is an encouragement to grandparents who are far away from their grandchildren and distance. I never felt any sort of lack of love or connection from my grandparents, because they did always make that effort. Those phone calls, they always came to at least one of our sporting events each season. They would make the drive to come stay with us. Or my parents went on a cruise one time and they would come and they would watch us. And I saw how they would make that 10, 12-hour trek just to come see us. And those were like the best of times. And I've always been very, very close with my grandparents. And so I think it is something that's possible. And I would say, don't believe the lie that you can't be close to your grandkids, or that they won't know how much you love them, or know you as much as you want them to know you. It's all still very possible. And they see the effort that you're making.
You have gifted us with the most adorable grandchildren that ever did happen. And I mean, the minute you come through the door, it doesn't matter what's going on that day. Our day is instantly awesome. I know they're young, but you know that we are trying to bond with these kids from the beginning. Do you have any thoughts on how a grandparent can build those ties and deepen those bonds with their grandkids as they're growing up?
In a lot of ways, just making the time like you have been doing. Like, you guys are great at when they're here. You're kind of there for them. Like, they get to choose what you're going to do. You're just, making yourself available for whatever they want, and they eat it up. And the fact that you give the time and space to, just want to be with them with whatever it is, I think does a ton. The only thing that I think might be different, and it'll be more impactful as they get older, but I've been thinking through this, and I've started to see how it really impacts Reed, actually, is even just how you talk to him. It's really easy to, like you said, they're all super cute kids. And so in the moment and in the just quickness of life and what you're doing to like compliment him on like, oh, you look so cute in that outfit, or focus more on the superficial stuff of how they look or what they're doing, which is fine and it's nice. But I think I'm trying to step into being more intentional, at least here and there, taking time to really encourage him and build him up in the things that really matter, like his character. And every so often I'll just kind of stop and say like, hey, like, I just want you to know, like, I'm really proud that you're like really tenacious. Like, you don't let stuff get you down. If you have to, just anything like that, like the certain things I see in him. And it is crazy how at even 2.5, like he'll stop and look at me and he like, he's taking it in and he realizes it's different and that I'm trying to communicate something different to him. And so as he gets older too, if he gets that from more people, like, wow, people really see me for what makes me me. And we're focusing on the important things in that of like, we want you to be humble and a hard worker and these different things. It's kind of like your character. Yeah. I just already see how that's so impactful to him at this young age where he doesn't even really actually know what's going on, that as he gets older, I think that'll only compound.
I think to add to that, I've been trying to put more energy into celebrating Farron's efforts rather than her performance. So not just saying good job when she's done what she's trying to do perfectly, but encouraging that process of failing and getting back up and trying again and having fun and being there and supporting the process of learning and making that just as important and just as celebrated. And then when, she's accomplished what she's trying to do. And so I think, yeah, like similar to what you're saying, Josh, like that kind of being aware of how we're communicating and what messages we're sending through even the love that we're, it's really easy to put the focus on what's up. Because yeah, like they're cute and they're talented and we're biased and like they're, we think that we're amazed by every stride that they take. And you guys are really great at following their lead too. I think that you really notice the individual characteristics of each kid, even from such a young age. Like you point out like, wow, Reed is really into this. And like, this is what he's fixated on right now. And so we're going to lean into that and we're going to create space or get him what he needs or take him where he needs to go to be able to like pour into this unique interest that he has. Or, oh, Farron's in a phase where she's loving sensory play. And so we're going to like get messy in the water or take her outside and let her explore. And you truly will follow them anywhere to foster, the path that they're trekking.
Bumpa's followed Reed literally everywhere.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously, he disappears. Yeah, so I think similar to like in the physical way that you're fostering and encouraging and following the unique interests and path that all of your grandkids are on, also verbally doing the same thing where you're like emotionally pouring into their unique souls and hearts and kind of needs and all of that. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Grandpa's one-liner that he would say a lot. Grandpa, great grandpa to our boys. He would always just like stop me and be like, just so you know, like, I love you and I'm thankful the Lord gave you to me. That was like his like, yeah. It says, but all these, like, that's always stuck with me. Like, I don't even know if he realized how much, but just, it's like that little thing, but it's like, hey, you're God's, I realize you're a gift from him and I want you to know I love you. And like, it was just, every time he said it, it was different than all the other stuff. But now it's like, wow, like just that one little sentence makes all the difference.
Yeah. A lot of what Emma said too, I feel this is just such a fun, unique time in like Reed's life and Farron's life. I know your newest is still in that,
Kind of a potato.
Yeah. I was going to say blob phase, but I didn't want to sound rude, but that is kind of where they are at that point.
It's accurate.
But yeah, just being receptive to her changes and what she likes that week or day or hour even, because it does change. Her playing with her, being intentional about the time that you spend with her. So yeah, she really likes that. Yeah, and you guys do something really great because she is so excited to come here every time. Like, we literally told her this morning, Emma had to wake her up an hour early from like what she normally wakes up. She seemed very tired, but Emma was like, "You get to go to Grammy and Bumpa's house," and Farron just got so excited, so she understood that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say with the quality time, you guys are really good, and so are my parents, about finding that one-on-one time. So just taking them out on dates and doing something fun and carving that time out of your schedule to really have consolidated time just with that grandchild. And I know it's something you're really passionate about. You have your daddy-daughter date books. There's a little shameless plug for you.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
So I think this is the same concept, right, of having that one-on-one time so they feel prioritized and seen and special in their relationship with you. It's a really big piece.
Yeah, I feel a little funny calling you and saying, "Is it okay if Reed comes over and plays for a while on Saturday?" But it's all worth it. I was telling somebody, I don't even remember who, a week or two ago, that I wish I could go back and parent my kids with grandparent eyes, because you don't have all the stressors that you were talking about earlier. You're not in that same building mode. You can just, you can just love them and focus on them without all the stress. And then they do go home and we do get to sleep while you're trying to get some rest, but I think that's something that grandparents we can try to remember and offer our kids, is that, by coming alongside and supporting you in your parenting, remembering how challenging it can be as you're raising those kids, and then being sensitive to the fact that the culture is unique today from when we were raising kids. And so you have unique challenges, and just being able to help come alongside and let you guys have that, kind of that experience too of the joys, because you can focus on the joy more if you have those communities around you and the family support and everything. And the focus is on the kids and helping you guys have a good marriage, love your kids, and be there for your kids. And so that's one thing we can offer.
I know for all of you, you do love the Lord. You've committed your way to him. I know that you're deeply committed to introducing your kids to the person of Jesus. And since that is important to you, and that's our heart, like, how can we partner with you in that?
More and more prayer again. I think it's like a longer conversation, but I know, at least for us, like one of the things we've done for each of the boys is take the time to pray through and try to find a passage that we feel like is from the Lord for them. And then we turn it into a prayer, and that's what we have framed on each of their walls in their room. And so every night we say that prayer, and it's one of those, I forget where it is in the Bible, but basically God's like, "Hey, David, I see you want to do this thing, but I'm going to do it through your son." And then there's a prayer in the Psalms, I believe, where you see David praying for his son that he would do the thing that God's set for him. And so as a parent, I think we're very fortunate to be in this position where God's like, "Hey, as the leader here, I'm going to give you some insight into what I might want to do in your kid's life." And so that's some of this verse or these prayers that we have for the boys, because each one's different. And so it's just that intentionality of like, we need to be intentional to share with you guys, "Hey, this is what we think God's kind of up to, at least in this season." It's probably going to change as he gets older.
I think that, Farron's still so young and doesn't understand. Like, we can read Bible stories to her and stuff, but she's not there yet, but she is at the age where she is watching what everyone's doing around her, and leading by example is like, she's watching. And so honestly, just including her in your walk with the Lord is really powerful for her right now. Her seeing you be in the Word and being in prayer, and including her in that as much as you can. But I feel like just allowing her to be a witness to your walk is laying a really firm foundation for when she is ready to, dive in on her own journey. But she loves you guys so much and respects you guys just like, she loves us so much, and she's watching all of us and what we're doing and how we're spending our time. So her being able to, even as young as she is now, see you committing your time to the Lord.
That's good. Thank you. After we're done recording, you guys are going to go home and sort of sleep. So as we kind of get ready to go our different ways, what would be the most meaningful way for us to pray for you as dads and moms tonight?
I think just praying that we would have less of us and more of Christ, because the reality is we're just not enough of our own efforts, and we can have the best of intentions, but we are imperfect. And so I think my prayer, it would just be to help me be the mom and the wife and the woman that God wants me to be, and that the Spirit would help me to do that, because I think every day we are in a battle of fighting against our own emotions or our own weaknesses, and we really do need the Spirit to be our strength and our guide and our help. So I think that would be my thing, is just that the Spirit would be at work in me and helping me to look more and more like Christ, not just for my kids, but because I want to glorify God with my life. And I think your kids, your friends, everyone in your community sees that, what the work he's doing in your life, that's just like a natural overflow that other people will see him in you. And that's really the purpose of our lives. So
Praying that through being parents, that God would grow our faith, because I think that's a lot of what he's trying to do. So much of why, kind of with the first questions, and it upends our lives, and adjusting to parenting. Part of what I feel like is so difficult about it is just the lack of control. There's not really anything else in life where you step into it and you realize just like, wow, at the end of the day, he's his own little person, and I cannot control that. And even just all the circumstance, like, you love these kids so much. And so it's not even that I can't control him, but I can't control the world and how that's what might happen from that. And so there's so much there that I don't know if there's anything else I've faced in life that is kind of like a daily step of faith, where I just have to trust that, he is the Lord's and he's got it, and he's trying to use this for something. And it's a pastor we know has like a line where he says, like, God's currency is faith. And so it is, he's trying to use everything to grow our faith, to draw nearer to him. And then the prayers that if I can do that, Reed will pick up on, like, wow, like he'll see that, and that'll actually in turn be used to grow his faith. But it's hard. It's like the whole, like, stepping out of the boat thing. Like, every day I just gotta do the next thing that the Lord set in front of me and trust that he's got it.
I was going to say, I feel like Farron's in a phase right now, but I feel like this is just like the nature of having a child, is it's like very overstimulating. And there's a lot of noise, like literally, but also just so many thoughts swirling all the time. And it's so easy to almost feel like you're muddled in this like thick wave of like thoughts and sound, and like just trying to juggle it all and do it all right. And something that I would love prayer for is just to, I guess, the strength and the help from the Lord to keep my eyes fixed on him. And that will bring kind of the clarity and quiet the noise, and just that supernatural peace that God always talks about, and how he's the only source of that. And I like what you're saying. I think that having a supernatural calm and peaceful energy is such a Christ-like example to lead. And I feel like we live in a time where we're surrounded by hustle and bustle and noise and chaos and anxieties and all of these things. And I just so badly want to emulate a calm energy for Farron in the midst of a chaotic world. And I know that the only way that I can do that is to seek that from God. And so that's kind of what's on my heart right now.
Well, why don't we pray for that now, for you guys, but also for people listening, that God would meet them in that. Father God, we thank you for this time and the opportunity to just have a conversation about how we can love and support these beautiful kids that you've blessed our life with. And you say children are a blessing from the Lord, and they truly are. but there is a lot to navigate in that. And we thank you for just the layers of family and community and life that you give us through your word, but through just even the church and through the family unit. And we know, Lord, our families aren't perfect. Our churches aren't perfect, but God, your faithfulness to meet us in those things and provide for our families and for us through those things is a gift. And so we thank you for that. And I just lift up Josh and Cassie and Adonis and Emma and any of the families that are listening today, and just do ask, Lord, that you would strengthen and help them in their parenting journey or their grandparenting journey to trust you, to remain in you, to see you provide your strength and your power in their weakness, to be able to cast cares on you, knowing that you care for them, to be able to pray and seek you, and like Emma said, keep their eyes fixed on you so that they're not anxious about anything, but in all things seek you and have that peace that surpasses all understanding. God, I just pray in the day-to-day that we all would find space to listen to you, to seek you through your word, and to just listen to what the Spirit's asking of us and how the Spirit is praying for us. Thank you for the reminder that Jesus is interceding for us, that the Spirit, even when we don't know what to pray, even then when we are lacking in sleep and don't have the strength, the Spirit is interceding on our behalf and gives us counsel and wisdom to know what to do. And I just pray for families that may be in a hard season right now, that they would reach out and find community through church, or be able to humbly ask for help from family and friends. And I pray for those listening who can step into others' lives in those seasons, whether grandparents or whether spiritual grandparents or mentors, that if they know that they can come and provide some relief and some help and some encouragement, that they would step out and do that. Thank you for this time. And I just pray and praise you and thank you for these kids and these grandkids that are such a blessing to our life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you all. We're so grateful that you took this time with us today to just create a little more empathy and understanding as we're doing life together as a family. We love you, and we're just grateful for all the joy that you bring to us.
Thank you, friends, for joining us today on the Growing Home Together podcast, our 100th episode. Woohoo! We would love to connect with you over on our website, growinghometogether.com, where we have all kinds of resources for your kids, for praying for your kids, for praying for your grandkids, or connecting with each other as a couple too. At Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family.
And we're growing home together with you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growing Home Together podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found some valuable insights to help you care for the soul of your family. Remember to check out growinghometogether.com for more resources, and stay tuned for our next episode coming your way soon.